You have to be thankful to the bishop forever. Because that bus finally made its way here. I told him, he saw me logo Chepalungu, Chepalungu Secondary School. So later on, anyway, to cut a long story, the bus made it this way. There are many development projects in the church and in education sector where this museum was involved in. I am privileged indeed to have known and called Waziri Koech a friend in what he termed confirmation. Somewhere early March, Your Excellency, he invited me to his hospital bed at the Nairobi hospital. And he said, I want AGC to confirm my baptism. I had been baptized a Catholic, but I think what he really meant is he wanted salvation. This was a man who was ready with a journey to go to heaven. So Reverend Kosonei, the cousin, and myself ended up in Nairobi hospital early March. We had a good time. Reverend Kosonei is here. And I asked him if he truly wanted to receive the Lord Jesus Christ. He was no longer ready. I know many people think the bishop baptized him. I just laid hands on him because he was no longer ready for what we call baptism by immersion. And I prayed a prayer of salvation. And after the end of that prayer, Kogi Saboyondoni Saed Neu Nebaboy Sheikh Cheki Gonam Jehovah again, Jeba Africa Gospel Church. Kusaw yuan. Emba Ishen Neba Bishop Nanyigis. I go saw the family Nanyin. I go saw Jige. I will lay on Bishop. This is my prayer of acceptance. So I want to confirm to this congregation that through that journey, particularly the last 2 months of John Koech, he prepared himself for his eternal eventuality. And I know he is with God. That morning, when the family had signed that since he had been declared brain dead, for about 2 days, the machines were removed. And we stood there with the family and a pastor from one of the congregations singing songs. And I really appreciate you, family, singing your father, you children of John Koech, into eternity as he breathed the last breath at the Nairobi hospital. So I want to say I'm grateful to have known this man. And we are grateful as a community, Your Excellency, for the amazing support that you have given him and the entire family on short notice. Indeed, you are a great man, Your Excellency, and a great son of this soil, and I thank you for coming through. You know, these retired former ministers and members of parliament can easily be forgotten, but we thank you for remembering a great member of parliament, a cabinet minister, and a great son from this soil. Thank you, Your Excellency. So much of what you see here, members, are a result of the intervention of His Excellency, and we really appreciate the leadership will speak to that. The word that was read to us by one of the children is Acts chapter 13, verse 36. And that's what I'm sharing from. It says, now, when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep. He was buried with his ancestors, and his body decayed. But the one whom God raised from the dead did not see decay. Amun yaginga ko bai sejit dauti kirwagu tigab Jehovah enibindanyin konuj agigitup ko bata kwani sheki agoger nunet agomager nunet inendet naginged Jehovah tegitupche kona buat rutoita nebo kiboitiot nekibois en emoni kenyisiek chekoen. Abwat ale John Koech en oratienyin ak en kimnotenyin kimuche kemwa kele kiboisiechi John Koech kirwogutikab Jehova en ibindanyin ako kokonuch. We can actually say that John Koech served the purpose of God in his generation, and he has rested. There are many evenings or nights and mornings that John Koech would call me. I don't know why. When he had deep concern, and you could tell this is a generational leader that transitions to the new leadership. And his concern was that we would live in peace. His concern was that our community would prosper. And indeed, Your Excellency, we can then say, this man, like David, served God's purpose in his generation, and he has fallen asleep. So 3 things I would like to briefly mention from there. When you remember David, David began his life as a shepherd boy, very obedient to his parents. And in that process learned a lot in leadership. He wrestled with lions. And I'm sure if you were to ask the story of John Koech, it's such a story of humble beginning. I was here a number of years, I think about 10 years ago. I can't remember Reverend Kosone, who we were burying. Mano alagingon ni gigunuri and family nebago John Koech. Komwa John Koech atindoniot nebamingin atenyin agelegi wedita sukul. Umara gurgo utie family atindonionotan kale gigawa mbogot ngwangipshele. Nangi gawa ngwangi gawa kaya akoit ka kwalji chumyot teta. Kemwochi kwandab John Koech kelenjin kai ngosoma lakwet kotatun konyokwale chumyot alengi chumyot no unomele teta komie. Kumegenjetab Chepalungu ak teta kiwek kwandab John Koech ka akole somani John situnga wek akine kwalji chumyot neu kele kipsheleo kipsheles nekikaalji kwanda tugab kwanda chumyot. That was the basic identity of our people. That if education was to be valuable, it has to be associated with livestock. And as you can see, Your Excellency, because of the desire of the father of John Koech to have his son buy the soil lick for his cows or his cattle, we have a man who went to Tenwek High School and went to the most privileged university of the time, Makerere University. And no wonder his Makerere colleague, the late President Mwai Kibaki, appointed him, because Kibaki was a strong believer in his old Makerere generation. But the man went to Makerere because a father, from that very humble beginning, sent him to school because of his cows. David, we all know in summary, was obedient to his parents. David fought these battles when his brothers were despising him. He's the one who faced the giant Goliath in the battlefield. We all know that David became a great king of the land of Israel. And we all know that one of the greatest, if not the greatest legacy of King David is the book of Psalms. An amazing psalm that gives us, even in moments such as this, words of comfort, words of love, and words of devotion to the household of God. So here, the writer of the book of Acts is giving us a summary of David, that he served God's purpose. And somehow he doesn't say purposes. There's a singularity of purpose. Kitela kwa nambara koske tina mwagule ingunon atindai amune sio sabe. Kosiragina chine kibare Rick Warren kitabu ndikimwa The Purpose-Driven Life, and another one called The Purpose-Driven Church. In ngolionda non tai nagando une yale kibaisyeji dauti kirwagutikab Jehova amwachi bororiye nyon ak chi tugul nekase ngolionda nebo funeral nebo Arap Koech ale ingotoretin Jehova ak ingotoretan Jehova asikeboisyechin kirwagutikab Jehova, that God would help you and I, that we would serve the purpose of God. Because it is possible in this life to live a life that has no sense or purpose. I particularly bring a message to the young generation that when we see elders like John Koech retiring and passing on to glory, I give us a challenge, the leadership that is now, and all of us younger generation, that we would also purpose, that we would be a generation that avoid those that destroys the very purpose for which God created us. A man by the name Dr. Miles Monroe, a few weeks after he left this country, had a tragic plane accident in his country of Bahamas. But I was watching him on television here in Kenya, and he said something I've never forgotten. I was still a very young leader at that time. He said, I would rather die empty than die all. Kole kai amme ko mkebe nongi nyitan mwaita negigirong une ko tangay ko magumi. Kole kai amme ko negirong ki wiske lenji ke mwa gelebo gorong tugul chegi miurinyin. John Koech in his generation gave us his best. He gave us all that he had. Sometimes we may not think it was much. Some of the things now we are able to do with devolution is amazing. But when you remember those children, the humble children who went to school, the children who came to Mama Angeline asking for little 100 shilling or school fees, and they were able to get because of this Musee. Yesterday when we had the service in Karen, I was impressed by some of the professionals in Nairobi that were really touched by the life of this Musee. He served God's purpose in his generation. Miles Monroe said, in addition to what he said that the graveyard is the richest place on the surface of the earth, because there you will see books that were not published, ideas that were not harnessed, songs that were not sung, drama pieces that were never acted, companies that were never started, masterpieces that were never painted. In the cemetery, there is buried the greatest treasure of untapped potential. There is a treasure, I want to say, particularly to young generation. There is a treasure in all of us that must come out to the very best. The man we have come to bury today gave his best and served God's purpose. Don't go to the grave with your treasure within you. Kimugul metaga tugul namitu yon. Ke tindai gi nagigone Jehova. Nemiten metinyan nemimugul elwe kya kakapwatu tikya. Nemiye une kya. Nengot ke baishe ke ae tuguk chekororon enungwandune. Number 2 is in his generation. That word begins by saying,